1, 2,
Standing
go.
by. You know it.
Here we go.
Hey, everybody, you're listening to and possibly watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or as I mentioned, possibly stream in. And tonight we have one principal subject. We'll be getting to other comics later, but for the majority of this show, we're going to be talking about Thunderbolts.
Thunderbolts.
Asterisk.
Asterix. Yeah, exactly.
Thunderbolts.
Should we spoil the new name? I mean,
Well,
they've already
very
have.
spoilerific, so we'll get to it.
Yeah.
But I would think we should keep it within the context of the film.
Yes.
And Thunderbolts, get this, it is the 36th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe series of films.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that, I think right after the Weekend came out, one of the things that popped up a lot, that a lot of, news sites were talking about, was somebody had interviewed Feige, and he had said, I think we may have just had too much content, too many TV series, too many other movies. Like, we tried to do a lot of stuff, and we weren't really, hitting a lot of it. But I think, this one obviously did really well.
Yeah.
And it seems like they have a pretty good slate coming up so far, but not an overwhelming slate, which maybe
It only took a decade of people going, hey, you're oversaturating the market with superhero films, for one of the biggest producers of superhero films to go, we might be doing too much. You
We
fucking
might be
think?
doing too much.
Because it's not, again, you have to keep in mind too, it's not just superhero films, right? It's all, or not just Marvel, it's also DC, and there's the Boys, and there's all these other, superhero / comic book derived things that are happening, and they're all playing for the same market share, and
Absolutely.
they weren't all good. So
I think that's the thing. There was that, obviously for a while people were like, superhero fatigue is the problem. It's like, we're just all tired of it.
No,
But I think a lot of it really was the quality.
Yeah.
It was the quality. If you have a lot, if it's all good, it's not a problem. But if some of it was middling and some of it was not, as well produced, or maybe just didn't hit with the audience,
Mm-hmm. Well,
you have a large number of them that don't fit with the audience.
I think there is an argument to be made for one or two a year.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely an argument to be made. And I think there's so many missed opportunities. Secret Invasion, I think, is the biggest missed opportunity, because that could have been a landmark film. And instead, they were, and again, we talked about this on the show, there was a lot of pressure on Marvel specifically to make Disney Plus a hit. And they're still they still haven't recovered from the initial. Ironheart has been completed for what, 4 years now?
A year? No, it's been at least over a year, but maybe not 4 years.
It stopped principal photography in 2021.
Really? Oh,
yes.
I just didn't think that it had been finished, but I guess photography, yeah. I mean, that's...
Yeah. So, and I know that there's an order to things, that certain things have to happen before or after something happens, but I think that's just endemic of some of the problems that they've had.
Yeah, I mean, you can't sit on something like that, though. I mean, like, because how are you going to do a sequel to it if it hits? Like, all of a sudden now your person's like a decade older.
Yeah.
Like,
You know, I mean, the first time I remember that happening was Halloween and Halloween 2, which are supposed to take place on the same night. And
Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis looked 4 years older. I mean, still very young, but there's a difference between a teenager and somebody in their 20s. You
yeah,
can see.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when that person is Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
And,
So,
but yeah,
I love her.
and I think a lot of the issues that they've had with frequent reshoots, rewriting of a lot of their properties, a lot of the shows, the movies. I mean, the last Captain America movie, Brave New World, was a product of multiple rewrites, multiple reshoots, complete changes in plot, and
and scheduling.
That I think they tried to do too much, and then trying to juggle all of that creates more problems. So, yeah, I mean, cutting it to a couple movies a year and maybe one or two shows,
enhancing it with shows or animation or video games, which seems to and it does seem that that James Gunn and DC looks like they're taking more from the Star Wars side than the Marvel side in terms of cues.
Well, the fact that they're including animation in there,
and video games,
in their like canon universe,
but
yeah.
I'm just saying, like, this summer, this is the most excited I've been about a year of comic book movies in a long time.
Yeah.
Just between what we saw here, Fantastic Four and Superman, I am just so excited for this year.
Well, also Daredevil mixed in with that too. I mean,
Daredevil's great.
I thought Daredevil was fantastic. I really liked it.
I thought it was okay.
I thought it was fantastic. So I mean, for me, it's on both ends, right? So we've got
some of it is the terrain they covered, and it's like,
fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of art, actually, in this case, it would be life imitating art, but
just like even at this point, I have not watched anything of Andor past episode 3. I'm just not in the headspace.
Yeah, I haven't watched any of it either. Yeah. But I'm also not a big Star Wars person, so.
It's the one thing with Andor, the fact that they're releasing the 3 episodes all at once. For the first 3, it was like, oh, this is so great. And it's like, it's just heart pumping, you're great. But once you get to episode 4, you're like, I can't emotionally take all of what's happening in each episode all in one go. So we've been spacing it out. And, it's kind of like, okay, I think maybe it's better to take breaks in between episodes. Because there's just so much that's going on, but every episode is brilliant, which is great. But
we're straying, and we don't get that with a 2-hour and 6-minute movie.
No,
one nice chunk, and again, that nice chunk is Thunderbolts.
Oh my god!
Now, Thunderbolts was directed by Jake Schreier. I did not realize how
little
his resume was.
I mean, it's huge if you look at like all the music videos he's done.
I mean, with the music videos, and some of my favorite cable shows in the past few years between
Beef,
I'm Dying Up Here, and Minx. I mean, some really good television he directed for.
He even did Skeleton Crew, talking about Star Wars. He did an episode of that.
Skeleton Crew, that's correct. Yep. Yeah. But if you would have told me that this was somebody's 3rd theatrical credit, I would not have believed you after seeing it. I didn't. I was like, did I type the name right? But it was really well done.
Yeah. And I think because of how successful it was, this being his 3rd movie, his next credit could very well be the MCU X-Men film. And that's what they've been kind of chatting about this week. Putting him on that, which, hey, I mean, if he did well with this ensemble kind of film, he could definitely do something great with another ensemble film. I'm hoping.
So. Yeah. Well, Steve, you're our plot guy, so why don't you tell us what transpires in Thunderbolts? Asterisk.
Okay. So we'll see if I can sum this up pretty quickly, but who knows? So it starts off, it focuses on Yelena, the White Widow, and where she is in her life. She's depressed. She's kind of over it. She's sick of being, the go-to assassin / black ops / wet works person for everybody. She's tired of living in the shadows and doing these, dirty jobs for people. And she basically tells her boss, Valentina, that she's done. She kind of wants something more. She wants something that's more public and whatnot. And after performing a couple odd jobs that we see, on screen, for Valentina, cleaning up some labs for Oxcorp that are not good, she gets sent on one last job. Unfortunately for her, other people were also sent on that one last job. USA Agent, or the Bad Cap, Bad Captain America. You've also got Ghost. You've got Taskmaster. Essentially, all sent to eliminate each other, and then be burned alive in the Oxcorp archives, completely wiping off any evidence of wrongdoing. Also, while there, they discover there's another person named Bob, just some, poor nebbishy dude who looks kind of familiar to audience members mostly. But he doesn't really, know why he's there. They don't know why he's there. And so they all have to kind of get out alive. Well, one of them doesn't make it out alive. But they do eventually come out of the archives. They escape the inferno that was set to eliminate all of them, and walk right into a siege. Valentina has decided to basically get rid of all of them for good, and has her own personal army to eliminate them, except for Bob. Bob seems to be something she wants to keep. The team make it out alive, except they do need to, kind of get out one last final piece before they can actually get away from the entire army. And Bob decides that he's going to be the decoy to distract everybody while the rest get away. Unfortunately for Bob, he does get fired upon. Also, fortunately for him, he does not die. Turns out that the experiments on him were successful, and now he is the superpowered being that Valentina has been trying to create this whole time. The rest of the gang run into Alexei, the former Red Guardian, as well as Bucky, who is now currently a congressman, and eventually make their way to New York City, where they have to confront Valentina and try and stop her from using Bob, now known as Sentry, as her own personal superhero. And of course, the final confrontation there doesn't go necessarily as planned, but also doesn't really go in the direction that we, as the audience, might expect it to. But generally, my personal feelings on this, I loved it. I loved that some of the biggest action scenes were actually minor scenes in the movie. A lot of the heart and core of the conflict is more of an internal one. There's a lot of personal revelations. There's a lot of really great dialogue, really great character beats, and several tearful moments. I actually did, cry openly at a particular part in the movie. And so did my husband, who usually doesn't cry at Marvel movies. And there was one point in particular that, I could see Bill's face. He's like, nah, there's no tearful moment in this whole movie. Yes, there was, for me at least. But I thought it was great. The humor was there. The snappy dialogue was there. The way that they were able to let all the characters shine individually as well as together, I thought that was really well done. And it was pretty cool getting to see this ragtag group of sort of mostly throwaway villains from several movies get to finally do something heroic, but also be fun on screen. Yelena, has had her moments. She's actually, they've had her in the Hawkeye TV series, the Black Widow movie. She was great. And, other times where she's appeared, wonderful. But here, she gets to kind of lead the scene a lot more.
Mhm.
And also the other characters too get to have their like really dark, serious moments, but also, some lightness to it, some comic relief every so often. But I loved it. I loved the choice of villain, not really the villain that we expected, but I like the result.
Mhm. Was the scene you cried one of the Void flashbacks?
No,
No.
it was actually before that. So there's a moment where they're leaving, where they've confronted Sentry, who's basically kicked all their asses.
Yeah.
And they basically leave Avengers Tower, or former Avengers Tower, and are walking through the street. And Yelena just goes off on her own. And Alexei follows her and says, well, what's up? And she breaks down. She has her fully stripped bare, emotional moment. And that hit me because of everything else that they've had. Yes.
Oh, wow.
It did. It did.
Okay. I'm not disputing.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't. I mean, it had an emotional impact on me, but not to the point that I would tear up.
Oh yeah, I teared up.
Okay.
It was big because I felt that it was deserved. It was definitely. I mean,
All right.
we've seen all the movies. Maybe if you hadn't seen, and Bill, I know you have, but maybe if somebody hadn't seen, Black Widow, which a lot of people may not have, they may not have really understood how much she's developed and changed since then.
It's so funny because because of the situation with the pandemic, I almost have a feeling that's the one almost everyone's seen.
Maybe
that and Wonder Woman 84.
Oh, we've got some good comments here. Cliff on Comics just joined us, and
nice.
Like, outside of Steve talking, you boys look like Dystopia dragged you through the streets this week. Oh, really?
Yeah. It did. Yeah, that's facts.
And to be fair, it beat him up pretty good this week. And then his response, he absolutely.
I can't speak for Caleb. I know he had he got unnecessarily judged hair, and then I'm vain enough that I ran to get the L'Oreal Mega Hold, and try to fix this up. But just on top of that, I mean, I can't say this with Steve, but I know Caleb and I both had last 2 weeks have been kind of crazy.
Yeah, just busy. I mean, really even taking not taking to the account that we live in, constant wave after wave of depression from the outside world. Just actual real life has been busy.
Yeah,
not necessarily bad, but just exhausting. And so it's just kind of just tired. And we're coming up on Mother's Day. I was telling the fellas, we've got a full weekend of Mother's Day stuff going on, and fortunate to have that. Right. So I'm excited about it. Get to go see my mother-in-law, get to go see my mother. So I'm not like begrudging those things. I'm excited about it, but it's a lot of running around and that kind of thing on top of, again, movie going and friends and a very busy work schedule. So yeah, there's just a lot. And I got my husband. It is, by the way, it's Nurses Week. And so my husband and nurses all around the world, I guess, or at least the nation, are celebrating Nurses Week. And I haven't seen him all day. He actually left the house at 2 a.m. because he's a manager. So got up around 2 o'clock, left to go hang out and see his night shift people and spend some time with them and make sure they were cool. Stayed there most of the day, came home, took a nap, and then went back up there about 5 o'clock this afternoon to help with shift change and stuff like that. So I hadn't seen him all day. So he got home and was just handful of hair, just rawr. So
did he make the noise too? Did he go?
No, he did. Yeah, he does. He growls at me and wolves. But we keep that for the other side of that door.
Other side of the door.
But back to the film. So I didn't have the emotional reaction that Steve had, but I do felt like there was that, I hate the word relatable, but I struggle to find an apt substitute for that word. And actually, it's a good segue. What we just spoke about. Yelena is depressed. She's feeling unmotivated and unfulfilled and stuff like that. It's not that she's bad at anything. She's great at her job. She's busy, right? She's hustling her butt off. She's doing things, but she's just not getting the fulfillment. She's not getting that, and she's just wondering if this is what she was meant to do, what she was supposed to do, right? And she's feeling a little bit lost. She's disconnected from family. She's disconnected from passion. And the world around her is just constant chaos. And again, I hate the phrase, like I hate relatable, but I get it. Like, and so I was sitting there watching that movie. I was like, you know what? I understand where she's at in the world, and I feel that. And so when she did have that moment, and for me, the more it was not necessarily just her having that kind of personal moment. It was the fact that she was having it with her dad. That hit really hard, and I didn't have the tear, but I had the okay, yeah, I needed to see that, right? Like I'm with you there, and it brought that sense of humanity to, it's really hard to find yourself connected to, or you can empathize, but you can't really sympathize with, I don't know, the world's best trained assassin, somebody who's got my body count and her body count are two different things and two different numbers, right? And so it's how do you, what's the comparison there? How do I find myself as an audience member really understand what she's going through? It's she's a mid-30s chick who's really good at her job, but is just tired. Just, I get it. So I thought that was a great way to really, really anchor the movie in that way. And then, you take that with all of these misfit characters, right, to some degree, who are all, different origins. They're trying to find their own way. They're not really sure what's going on or where their place in the world is at. And they're just kind of thrown into the whirlwind of, whatever Julia Louis-Dreyfus leaves in her wake, which I thought she was phenomenal. Oh, I loved her. This was like evil Veep. I was here for it. And also it's not, she's like the MCU's Amanda Waller in a big way, right? So
I got something to say about that.
Okay, fair enough. But I before we just get heavy into details, I do think this is the return to it wasn't formulaic, yes, but I think it was a return to the formula that worked. I think it looked great. I think it was the right characters and the right cast. I think they went in a really great direction with it. I called the flip, and we'll talk about what the flip was later, but I knew what it was, and I was just kind of shocked that they actually did it more than anything. But I'm cool with this direction. MCU was a little bit rocky, like we said, a little bit of oversaturation, but also kind of directionless, especially with, they were leaning into Kang, and then that didn't happen because it turns out some people do bad things. And so they had to kind of reshift in the middle of kind of a major kind of event.
I think it's a combination of that, and plus the theatrical film that was centered around just wasn't very good.
No, right. I said it was kind of both. They had to course correct on a number of different things. It was not just a singular thing, but I think if you have one of those things and not the other, no matter which one it is, I think there's still an avenue to get there. I think with both of those two things happening, which was the sexual abuse or sexual assault allegations mixed with what was it, Ant-Man that he was really kind of front and center in?
Ant-Man,
Quantumania, yeah. That just, I enjoyed it, but that just, time travel is wonky and weird. Kang has never been a character that I really understood the longevity of, and so I just wondered why they went there. And it didn't work. And also it didn't work visually with the theme of what they needed to do, and it didn't work with just the world that we live in. So I think they did a really good job getting over those hurdles and getting back to something that formulaically works. I'm kind of like Bill, though. I wish they had have taken Secret Invasion and made that the movie instead of Kang. And I think in another universe, we get a really incredible series of films based off of that. Thought 2 thumbs up. Loved the movie. Had I can pick nits, but have no major complaints with it.
And I think something Steve said is really resonating with me in that it's a team film, but with the possible exception of Ghost, they all
Yeah.
really had a nice moment to shine in terms of a solo narrative. I thought it was a really well balanced film, really well balanced between the humor and the action. The pacing was just spot on, perfect for a popcorn film. You know, it slowed down at the moments where you needed a breath, and they used those moments to get some key information across. I thought the cast uniformly was very good. I adore Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I've watched her through, even the shitty shows like Day by Day, Wherever You Fall, and New Adventures of Old Christine. I've just always loved her since Saturday Night Live. And I thought that she had some awesome moments, but I also came away with we just don't need a Marvel. We just don't need an MCU Amanda Waller. We don't. That's covered. That kind of beat is covered. And which I also really liked, another kind of twist in the end with what Yelena whispers in her ear. That I at a different pace if we see this character going forward.
We own you now.
But I just thought even people in fairly small parts like Wendell Pierce and what's her name? I'm not even going to attempt her name. Geraldine Viswanathan.
Viswanathan.
Yeah, as
or Viswanathan.
Yeah, I mean, and I do hope she eventually becomes Songbird. I really, really do. Because I love
her.
That would be a wonderful progression for what we've seen with that character. But I thought the premise was believable. Certainly, assassins killing other assassins, that's a trope, but it worked here. I mean, it's a cliche, but it really worked here. And I can't imagine people shooting scenes and not cracking up with half the stuff David Harbour comes up with. I mean,
I love that man.
And just to become in this kind of this twisted, literal but also substantive father figure in a sense for the team, and I think the motorcycle chase with Bucky and his introduction, that's going to be taught in film schools. That scene absolutely will be taught in film schools about how to bridge action, and bridge plot points. I really liked it. Do I think that I think this, the MCU is back? We also heard that last year with Deadpool and Wolverine. I don't think it's really left. I think there have been films that have been, not as well conceived as others, but also I'm in the position where I think Eternals is one of the best films in that series, and I certainly am in the minority among the broader populace, let's put it that way. But it succeeds in all the points it needed to succeed, in every point, every single one, every single task that this film had set for itself, it succeeded. And that's a rare occurrence. That's a really rare occurrence. So,
I mean, and also just how it was filmed too, and this is props to the cinematographer and editor and of course Jake Schreier as well. But this was washed out, gritty. If you compare this to say Marvel's, just the color palette, everything that the absolute feeling that they were trying to get across came across perfectly in this. This is these are people who are live in the shadows. This is subject matter. This is extremely dark. This is unaddressed trauma. Dealing with depression, dealing with constant feelings of certain types of ideation. All of that came across perfectly in how this was filmed. And just shying away from the brightness, the potential brightness of different scenes, but breaking up with humor. So they were able to take to give you visually the language of what they were trying to get across, but at the same time allowed the dialogue to be funny. They allowed moments of like lightness to break it up, so it wasn't just a constant like drudge. Because if you look at how this was filmed versus, say, going back to Secret Invasion, very similar style of Secret Invasion looked like this. This was the same kind of like, you know, gritty, you know, lots of blue wash for everything. Everything's really gray.
But it was just tension all the time.
But it was tension all the time. There was nothing breaking it up, and it just you couldn't see any cracks of light. And in this movie, you can see that. You can see the cracks of light.
Filled with bright moments.
Yeah, well, and to reference the moment that Bill was talking about earlier, you know, the assassin versus the assassin trope is, you know, it's cliche. I think what made this work is because as it was happening, they weren't afraid to kind of like ham it up. Like they leaned into it. Like, no, like this, it reminded me of a like almost like a Kyle Starks moment, right? Like he's like, no, this is something you've seen before. We're going to make the joke out of the fact that we know what this is, which is. Is it genius? No, that's just the right way to do it. You know, I thought that was exactly kind of tonally what it needed to be, especially considering who all these people are. And for me, I knew that this movie worked when I found myself sitting there like thinking, wait, did they make me just like Walker? Like not only just the character, but also the actor. I've never been a fan of that guy.
Oh, I love him.
Jake Wyatt? Oh, I love Jake Wyatt.
Just like I haven't seen him in much outside.
Oh my god!
But I'm just like I don't feel. And I was with him in this one though, all the way.
God. Yeah. If I can recommend a movie where he is excellent and everybody wants some.
Everybody wants some. Yeah.
He is the whole cast is excellent in that, but.
You get to see most of them shirtless too, and like most of them become the heartthrobs of today.
Yeah, that was the movie where I saw Glenn Powell, and I thought I can't take my eyes off him. You know,
he's a star. He's gonna be a big star.
He's gonna be a big star.
Big star.
I just thought.
I
also think that the notion of and I also think the notion of scrappy underdogs ran through like so many elements of the music. Sunlocks, they have, they gained some notoriety naturally through Everything Everywhere All at Once, but this is sonically a totally different experience. There were times I forgot it wasn't an orchestra, there were times I forgot that this is like mostly played on three dudes with synths, there's just so much to like about this movie, I think that's the thing that I come away with it is, each time I start thinking about it, I think about something else that I liked. And this is, I predict, going to be one of the most rewatchable MCU movies.
Yeah.
Certainly. If you tell me like there's free tickets waiting for you and I had 2.5 hours to spare, I'd, what the hell? And I rarely double dip these days. So,
yeah,
when I get it home, that's another story,
Oh yeah, I mean this is definitely I'm gonna be buying this on Blu-ray or 4K Blu-ray, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought this was great. Wyatt Russell. For some reason I keep wanting to call him Jake Wyatt. Wyatt Russell. Yeah. But
like
he has,
and even some of the they did allow for some tongue-in-cheek stuff, like the conversation about his helmet. Given some of the pictures.
Well, and also Bucky's age,
Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah. But Bucky's age, he's like what, pushing 195, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
But the other thing too that was kind of cheeky, just to kind of throw it out there. Louis Pullman, who plays Bob / Sentry / the Void, he is the son of Bill Pullman and Spit and Image, but also there's a point where he's acting as a decoy. He gets shot at by like 100 dudes with machine guns, and his shirt, his like whatever schlubby shirt thing that he's wearing, is torn just to frame his abs, which are very much abbing. At the moment, and it's like, oh, so the schlubby dude is like jacked right there. So like they had to like put that out there. And I'm like, that was for something that was kind of like a really cool reveal. It was also really like, oh, come on, dude. Like, he did have a personal trainer, so of course he's gonna have to show it off right there. But I thought that was great because it's an expected moment. That's the Marvel movies have done this a long time where you have that reveal and it has to be like, oh my god, this person's actually a superhuman, starting with Captain America, of course. But I thought he did a great job playing nihilistic and self-effacing, but also there's that twist, that momentary turn where it goes from he can go from just self-loathing to extremely egotistical. And that it makes perfect sense given his character, given what we're told about him, that he has main character syndrome. Like everything is woe is me, but then hey, maybe it's woe is me because I'm actually the good one here and I'm the better one and I'm blah, 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 and then it goes from there, which is pretty cool. And it's an interesting way to reveal this type of character, which I think a lot of people who don't read Marvel comics have never heard of. And, maybe people who read Marvel may not really understand or know much about. But, the Sentry is a pretty interesting character. And very interesting that they would bring him out into the film, into the film universe.
But even the Sentry, it just seems that was a thing that, was, could have been destined for a one-off miniseries. But Bendis saw something in the character that said, hey, I can use him, and, for me, Sentry didn't really matter until, and not to spoil stuff, but what he did to Ares. Okay. The character just didn't matter until that moment.
Yeah. That's when it got real. That's when Marvel said, you're going to respect this guy. Like he's not just like sea-level Hyperion.
Yeah. Right? It's not just a goofy little retcon that winks at you. There's something more to this. Yep.
Yeah.
God, that was a good moment.
Yep. And I also have to say that I came away feeling like there probably wasn't that much on the cutting room floor. And the only thing that I can think of is that Lawrence Fishburne was originally credited in the film. So I imagine he may have had a Bill Foster. Who else he played? A Bill Foster moment with Ghost that may have been excised for pace.
Oh, yeah.
It may have been her moment. But
that's actually a good point. And you did mention, and I agree, Ghost probably doesn't have as much. She doesn't really have as much.
Yeah, but she's got a whole
that's revealed.
She's got the whole second Ant-Man film.
It's all there, right?
Well, yeah.
But we don't see her dark moments. We also don't see Bucky's dark moments either. We don't see Alexi's.
This is the lightest we've seen Bucky.
Yeah,
between throwing his arm in the dishwasher and
pizza on his shirt.
But I thought that was so. I'm glad y'all brought that up because actually that was I thought that was a really cool thing because sure at the actors themselves there's kind of a balance of star power there. Sebastian Stan is probably one of the better known names, but Florence Pugh is also Florence Pugh. But as far as the actual action hero goes, Bucky's by and large the most well known of any of those characters, right? But I feel like they did not. What they have done in other movies is where they focus on the star, right? They focus on the big name. And I feel like in this movie, they spread it out. They're like, we've got Bucky and sure but Bucky had Winter Soldier. We've already done that. So we're going to keep him over here. They didn't sideline him, but they allowed the audience to also spend time with other people in a big blockbuster, in a big film. Right. Yeah. And so now you get to, where they could have just focused on him and made the story about him. They didn't. They spread it out so much. And for getting the team together, kind of movie that really, has a lot of characters that not many people, unless you're us and you've watched all 36 and all whatever. There are people who haven't seen John Walker or did not see the TV show or, haven't touched on that stuff. So I thought that they made the right move with that in saying, hey, we're going to leave. We've already told his story, right? He's important here, but we're we're gonna give some weight to these other figures so that they actually feel like they matter.
But at the same token, I think that's an important point you're touching upon. If you went into this movie cold, as in regards to the MCU, that you had never seen any film before,
you can still watch it.
You could and grasp everything.
Yep.
Sure, there may have been like a couple of asides here and there, but you're gonna get 99.4% of the story. Without the benefit of what happened before.
Yeah,
and that's a sign of good filmmaking. That's a sign of really good filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, it has callbacks, obviously, to some of the original or some of the older films. I mean, the where Yelena's experiencing the Red Room and like being educated there. It has, to me, there was like a flashback there for Black Widow's story from Avengers: Age of Ultron, where she gets to relive sort of like moments in.
But if you didn't pick up on you still had an enjoyable experience. You didn't need to. You're like,
well, you still knew exactly what it was.
Wasn't requisite for your enjoyment experience. Yeah,
exactly. And even if you didn't know who John Walker was, there's like, it's dropped really early. It's like, oh, dime store Captain America, or Captain America from
the Avengers. All you needed to know was there was a team called the Avengers.
Yep.
That's all you needed to know.
Yep. Or Avengers.
Yeah.
Avengers with a Z.
That was funny.
Yeah.
You know what I'm really glad they didn't do in this movie? I'm glad they didn't do the cheap cameo. Right? Like we've seen that in other movies where they were like, where they brought in like, oh, here's Guardians of the Galaxy for 2 seconds just to remind you that they exist in the world, right? Or here's this, I'm glad they didn't do that, right? Where they just go and they remind you that this one character and this one actor exists, and then they blip out just so they remind you that, hey, it's a shared universe and we've got all these other things and yada yada yada. I'm glad they didn't do that. Like that, to me, that always cheapens a film. I'm really glad they did.
Or saves it if it's a really bad film.
If it's really bad, you're like, oh, finally something that's cool. I mean, people were talking about that because that was one of the things. It takes place in New York City. Well, where's Daredevil? Where's Kingpin?
Yeah.
Where's Spider-Man? It's like, well, we don't need to see this. This isn't their movie. They don't have to be there.
You're in Manhattan. You're naturally going to be talking about something that goes on towards the river in Hell's Kitchen or up in Forest Hills. No. It's a big place. Shut up.
Yeah, but you also have to remember, Bill, people who live in places like the places that I live functionally cannot grasp the concept of Manhattan. They do not really. I mean, think about this, right? A person like me who grew around with a bunch of fields and fucking fish and goats and shit, when I tell them to actually get them to understand that New York City is 14 square miles with about 6 times the population of Arkansas. Mm-hmm. Right? Like there's people here who own 50 acres, right? They own hundreds of square miles of land. Hey, dude, that's great and everything. 4 to 5 times the population of your state lives in 14 square miles in a little blip by the ocean. So they do not understand that in most places that are not major cities. It is hard for bumpkins like me to really to understand that, which, by the way, I mean, I could take that concept and apply it to a whole lot of like real world shit. But we won't go there. But I mean, I think that's why people do that. Like, well, why wouldn't they talk about that? Man, like, have you been to Manhattan? Like, ain't nobody talking to each other, number one. Like,
well, so that actually, and it was one of those things where when the Void, we've been talking about spoilers the whole time. So, anyway, but when the Void actually activates and starts fucking shading people left or I was like, is he killing them? And until Yelena walked into the dark and became a shadow, I was like, he's wiping out tens of thousands of people a second. As you see the darkness spread through the city, there's millions dead. Like that's like my thought process. And then of course it's like, oh no, they're not dead. They're just in a hellscape of their darkest moments. That poor little 4-year-old girl who's like, "Mommy," just gone. She's probably like, I can't find my doll for like, the entirety of the time.
She only needed 2 dolls, not 20.
She could only have the one doll. That's why she was really,
30.
sad about it. But it's just like the amount of potential death that was on the line here was high.
So, Bill, I'm curious about your take on this because, obviously, American, right? So, are we now to a place where we can have a mass casualty event in Manhattan as like a popcorn movie kind of thing now? Because I thought about that when I was watching. When I'm watching that, I'm like, oh shit, 9/11, right? Like, it's weird to me that we're homaging something like that. I don't know,
but to me that like actions like this feel so far removed from that concept because this was comic booky. I don't know. I think that was also another thing that I really liked is this could have been 4 issues of a miniseries that they just adapted. It was extremely comic booky.
Yeah.
And
the fact that people there was a very low body count in this, just to kind of throw it out there. Overall, low body count for a movie. Yeah. I think there were a couple people that Yelena murdered in the first 10 minutes. And then
saved the guinea pig. That was my first moment.
Oh, you killed him! I needed his face. Like that guy.
I needed that face.
I need that face. Oh well, that was such a great, like, that whole scene was really well done. The fact that she's walking around in like sweatpants and a loose fitting sweatshirt hoodie thing, and like taking people out dark hallway Daredevil style, just killing them all. Fantastic, just well choreographed, really cool. And of course, the first primary stunt is now a famous stunt. The fact that she jumped off of that the building for that second tallest in the world. I overall, I think every moment in this, every time I think back on that movie, like there's more moments that I just sort of like, oh, that was really good. That was a great touch. I love that thing, Alexei in his hotel bathrobe.
In Washington did not feel, they felt fresh. We've seen scenes like that constantly of the, how we just had it in Brave New World. But even that felt fresh, Yeah.
It was neat. It was also, it was nice. You get to see Bucky. Bucky wasn't Winter Soldier Bucky, Bucky Barnes until like more than halfway through the movie. Mm-hmm. You see him, he's in a suit and tie. He's in a, he's hanging out in his apartment. Like there's not a lot of like his superhero persona isn't there. He's trying to do it. But sorry, my cat is.
No, it's not your cat. Steve, did you intentionally spell Avengers wrong?
Avengers. Coalesce.
Okay.
You don't.
I get it now that you said it.
She-Hulk reference.
Yeah.
Avengers. Coalesce.
Okay. Funny joke.
I could have spelled it like the
deep
Avengers.
Cuts. Steve with the deep cuts for folks who aren't watching.
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, I forget that they don't see the thing.
Yeah. Only people watching get to see our little taglines. So America now with 100% more Pope. Yes, we do.
Good movie hand clap. Good movie hand clap. All right. So on the comic book bears, because since we are a comic book based podcast, what we do when we talk about a film is we also provide a comic book. Might be a miniseries, might be a single issue, might be a ongoing, that we think if you enjoyed Thunderbolts, that we can point you to that involves some of the characters. And we each have a choice. And we're going to go through that. And we'll start with Steve. Steve, what's the comic book you would recommend for somebody who might want to dip into the comic world after seeing Thunderbolts Asterix and might want to enjoy a series involving one of the characters?
Well, one of the characters that was in here, and ostensibly, if you weren't, if you just paid attention to the early marketing materials, the Sentry. Who is the Sentry? What's the Sentry? What is this? What is this character supposed to be? Never heard of him. He's not, Avenger, not Captain America. No, who is this thing? This character? Because he was the mystery character. He was Bob. In a lot of the marketing materials, asterisk Sentry. The Funko Pops were popping up. Like, who is this Sentry character? And I haven't read a lot of Sentry related comics. There have been several miniseries. There have been several sort of like ongoing maybe more maxi series. Because he's a relatively new character. He's only been around for about 20 some years, so practically a baby. But I decided to go back to the 2018 miniseries that was written by Jeff Lemire, drawn by Kim Jacinto and Josh Cassara, with colors by Rain Barreto and Travis Lanham on letters. Let's see if I can pull that up. This was, I believe it was part of the Marvel Now initiative, or one of the Marvel initiatives that they had. It wasn't. Hold on. Bill, you're on.
Yeah, I was muted. That's way later than Marvel Now.
Well,
Marvel Now was
maybe it wasn't Marvel. Maybe it was Marvel. There was one of the Marvel things that was going on.
Marvel Now was 2012.
2012. So
was
maybe
that
it was
when
Marvel.
they were doing the AI, or not the AI, the where you scan the thing with your phone? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That would have been 13, 14.
2012.
Yeah, and then they had something in 2015
that immediately followed New 52.
Gotcha.
In 2018, there was some kind of thing that they're doing. Maybe it was just everything was a new number one. Everything was a number one at that point.
Marvel Next. I mean, they've done that like 5 times.
Marvel something.
Yeah.
Since everything became a new number one, was that Generations? Maybe. Because they had the anniversary issues, and then they would follow that up with and they had the lenticular covers, and none of them worked.
I mean, with everything now, it's like a new number one every 6 months. So
anyway, it was born out of something. So go ahead.
Yeah, some kind of thing where they wanted to do a lot of number ones. So they brought back, the Sentry for a miniseries, and this one I thought was done very differently. One, it's written by Jeff Lemire, so he's going to approach it in a very interesting, unique way. And in this volume, essentially, Sentry has been contained within the mind of Bob. So Bob himself is now just a general. He's back to being his old schlubby self. He basically works in a diner. He lives alone in his little apartment. He sits around in his boxer shorts, and he puts himself into this mini micro dimension that Doctor Strange has placed in his brain, that allows him to be the Sentry for, so many hours. And in this micro world, he fights crime. He's got his, he's got his kid Sentry scout sidekick, and he's also got the Sentress, who's a female version of himself, that he's modeled after the woman that he works with at the diner. And basically, they fight crime, they fight the Void. The Void is like is constantly hatching evil schemes to try and take over the city or the world, and they spend all their time just fighting overnight. And then he leaves and he goes back to the real world, and everything's taking place in his brain. So but he has to do this. This is something that he's required to do every 24 hours. He has to go become the Sentry in this little micro dimension, and then, leave and go back to his life. And the reason for that is that if he lets it go for more than 24 hours, the Sentry and the Void might break out, and the end of the world will happen. Basically, he has to keep them both contained within his mind or within this micro dimension, or else, things will go bad. And of course, what's going to happen? Things go bad. And one of his, old nemesis, I can never get his name right. It's like Cranion or oh gosh.
Don't give me the line to you.
Yeah, it's like Cranio or something like that. But anyway, he steals the device that he uses to go into this micro dimension, or to go into his mind, and he goes into it and he starts wrecking absolute havoc in this world, this sort of false world that's been created for the Sentry. He kills Scout, he kills Centrist, all of these things, and poor Bob is stuck in the real world. He doesn't know what's going on, but he knows that if it's less than that if he doesn't get back in there within 24 hours, Misty Knight and the rest of the and the government agency that's tasked with tracking him are going to basically bury him so far underground that he'll never be able to escape. And of course he's going to turn into Sentry at that point and basically be forced to to live with this constant battle of wills between Sentry, Void, and Bob. Interestingly enough, Tony Stark finds him, takes him to this, he gets taken to this sort of underground bunker where they're like, this is last resort if you can't get out. He somehow is able to pull Sentry out and sends the Bob persona into this world. And this image right here, I have up on the screen if you're watching, this is probably one of the more famous images. If you Google Sentry, you're probably going to see this. This is from this miniseries. And it's basically him telling Tony Stark, screw you. I am not going to live as a prisoner. I need to be free. You can't contain me. Because he's that powerful, he can pretty much mean it. In the meantime, we find out who basically gave away his secret, and it is his former sidekick Scout. Scout's been, or Billy, has been putting up with his shit for years. He blames him for everything that's wrong with his life. He's lost a limb because of the Void, and he wants the power of Sentry for himself. And so he made a deal with Crane, with the villain, to give him this, this device so that he can kind of ruin, what's going on in the Void. And meantime, he's found the golden serum that gave Sentry his powers in the first place. So he's now trying to be the new Sentry. Well, of course, old Sentry shows up in the real world and is like, no, this won't do. Meanwhile, Bob has decided that he is going to embrace the Void for once and actually let him in. And so the real world and the micro dimension coalesce inside the body of Sentry, and Sentry becomes basically complete for the first time. And it's just such a beautiful scene, really crazy, insane. Scout's like, oh shit, I'm kind of fucked here. That Bob, Sentry, and the Void are now one. And unfortunately, he's now presumably the most powerful superhuman on Earth. And he's free. And this is where they leave him at the end of the miniseries. Like, this is not a great thing. This is not great for the Marvel Universe, because now there's somebody out there who, again, is too powerful for anyone to really contain, who's kind of morally ambiguous at this point, and has now fully embraced his dark half. So it's an interesting introduction to the Sentry character. You don't get a lot of his background. You get a little bits and pieces, but you fully get to understand, the way Lemire writes him, fully gets to understand the fact that as a human, he's kind of a mess. As a superhero, he's kind of like this golden age. He's got this golden age superhero, ideal of himself. But he's also the Void, which is one of the most evil and, destructive powers in the planet. And at the end of the series, he actually gets to be that. He gets to be the full package. I thought this was great. Good introduction to the character. Good story. The art is wonderful. I mean, some great images like this if you're watching along. Just some really good comics. And it's 6 issues. You can get it in collected form. I was able to get it off of Comixology, so you can get digital or buy the trade. Really worth it.
Nice.
I don't know. Has anybody else read this one?
Who's the artist on this?
There were two. It's between Kim Jacinto and Josh Cassara.
Did they handle different aspects of the story?
Different issues. I think Kim Jacinto took the majority of it, and I think the last issue was Cassara.
Okay.
So you can kind of see the difference here. This is, I believe, this is Cassara.
Yeah. The reason I was asking because that looked different enough from the earlier images, so that
yeah. But it's just so much fun getting to see, you know, some of these images are just, if you look for anything Sentry, you're gonna see this. And this is just so, because this is the image that I imagine when I think of Sentry, and it's like, oh, that was from this series.
You know, it's funny too. I never realized. So I read this when it first came out. I have not read it since and haven't thought about it a lot. There is a lot of Abraham Slam in Jeff Lemire's Sentry, and I had not put those two things together till you were talking about it, both visually and in just the way that he writes Abraham Slam in his, in Black Hammer. And as somebody who I love Jeff Lemire, and I try to think about the way he connects all of his stuff, and so there's an interesting gap there if you study Jeff Lemire in the way that a lot of people study, you know, a lot of the 1960s and 50s artists. Then you can kind of track their work and their themes that they work with a lot. There's some interesting stuff there that I had not realized before, so that's neat from a nerd, really deep cut nerd perspective.
Absolutely. But I mean, reading this from Jeff Lemire, like, you can see how he can make something seem, and you know, Sentry is definitely part of the Marvel universe, and there's, you know, there's a lot of cameos from other Marvel characters in there, but you could excise those completely.
Yeah.
You could get rid of the Doctor Strange connection. You can get rid of, you know, Iron Man, Misty Knight, all of that, and just have something about a superhero who lives in his own head, and also has this extremely dark, evil side. And it could work well as an indie comic. And I think that's where Jeff Lemire really shines, is that he can make something that's so, you know, expansive as part of the MCU, but make it so well contained that it could be completely disconnected from all that and still.
Same thing with Moon Knight. Yeah.
Yep. All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what's a book that you might recommend for people who saw Thunderbolts and might want to read more Thunderbolts?
Okay, so I'm going to take you on a thing here. Just bear with me. So to Bill's point, we always think about this. It's like, what are the characters in this film, and what can they go be in, and where are they at in comics and the team and stuff? And I thought immediately, oh, you know what? There was a series that came out. I think it was a 4-issue series called The Thunderbolts from 2024, like a year ago, that came out, and it's led by Bucky, and it's got some of the pretty formulaic stuff, although he does fight Kid Kaiju. And then I went to get it out of the box, and I'm like, or I can talk about an older version of the Thunderbolts that features none of the characters from this film and has almost nothing to do with what went on in this film.
But I think that's important to talk about, Caleb. I think that's really important because what is lost is how the Thunderbolts were originally conceived.
Yeah.
And to just provide the Reader's Digest version, the Thunderbolts were the masters of evil in disguise. And I think that's important, that, you know, the history of Thunderbolts, you know, to me, Dark Avengers were the Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
You know, and you know,
it is
various
more
times Hawkeye has led them, the Black Ops that Red Hulk led. It's been an ever evolving concept.
Well, and what's cool about the concept, right? Because you're right. I mean, Baron Zemo led this team, right? It was the Masters of Evil. But as the title Thunderbolts have gone from bad guys into a superhero team, we now associate Thunderbolts with a superhero team, which is cool, right? Conceptually, considering where it started with, and funnily enough, that's where the theme of Thunderbolts, the film, was, right? These people who are kind of bad and not even amoral, like there's some bad people there. Yeah. They become heroes. So I thought that was cool conceptually, but and I do think, yeah, Bill, I mean, it's also important to note that there, I mean, more than a 44 issue series that had a lot of different characters, but that was not the really intellectual, smart, super cool reason I did it. I did it because it gives me an opportunity to talk about the glorious series that was the Avengers Volume 3 by Kurt Busiek and George Perez. And I can do that because of this 3-issue series that I want you to go on a back issue diving hunt, go bin diving and see if you can find them. And the series is the Nefaria Chronicles, basically, and it takes place over Avengers Volume 3 and Thunderbolts Volume 2, circa 2000, right? And so issue 33 of the Avengers, 44 of the Thunderbolts, and 34 of the Avengers. And again, none of the characters you saw in this glorious film will show up in this series. But it's fun because it does feature some of, it features some of these folks who are B-level Avengers, right? And as we have said, there is a asterisk by the name Thunderbolts in this. And I think it was a really fun story. And so the story in a nutshell, Count Nefaria, if you're not familiar with, used to be a magia bigwig, just a mafia guy. And then he got like ion powers that made him into a super villain, right? And he also has a daughter named Madame Mask, who is kind of like a Black Widow bad guy. Well, it's a Captain America bad guy, but kind of that she's a super spy, kind of assassin, kind of a badass, wears a mask, and that's his daughter. And they are at odds with one another, kind of always, constantly. Well, in this series, Avengers do the Avengers thing, and they undercover a plot, and they find out that Count Nefaria has got two people who are also ion-powered folks under his control, and that is Atlas, who was part of the Thunderbolts, and it was Wonder Man, who was part of the Avengers, Simon Williams, right? Both of them now have these ion powers, and Count Nefaria learned how to manipulate them. That's what brought all these teams together. And of course, he's got an evil mustache-twirling plan where he's going to build a bomb and irradiate the entire world, and that way he can control everybody, right? And so these two teams have to sync. Oh yeah, by the way, amazing art. I would say again, obviously George Perez did the Avengers stuff, and then Mark Bagley was on the Thunderbolt stuff.
His Thunderbolt stuff is so good
and underrated.
So
no one talks about his Thunderbolts work when they talk about Bagley, but it bounces through these.
It's like all Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah,
they really do not. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right.
But yeah, they bounce back and through these three titles with this 3-issue arc, and with the Avengers, you've got Iron Man, Thor's not in the picture, Scarlet Witch, just because George Perez deserves to always draw Scarlet Witch, but you've got a character named Triathlon, and then over on the Thunderbolts, I mean, you've got Mach 2, who is really Mach 1, who is supposed to be in jail but broke out, and so secret identity. You've got Songbird. You have all of these characters. Atlas, like I said, you have all these characters who are on a bit of a redemption arc. And so they're nervous when they have to team up with characters that are the Avengers, right? That are Captain America, that are She-Hulk, because they're like they feel like they're the underdogs, right? They're not meant to be there. They have tainted pasts and don't deserve to stand next to these Titans. And they have to earn it, right? They have to work with them and also have these figureheads who are very entrenched in Marvel kind of take them under their wing and just talk to them like people. And I think that was an important moment. At the end of the day, they like, again, spoilers from the year 2000, the Avengers overcome. Wonder Man and Atlas actually are able to break free of the power. They take the bomb up into space. It does blow up, fucks them all kinds of up. Wanda cries, Simon's going to die again. It's a sad story. It's just, it's 2000s melodrama at its best, right? It's wonderful stuff. But it's funny to me because in a lot of ways, even though none of these characters in Thunderbolts are in that movie that we just saw, it's still a lot. It's still the same tone 25 years later, right? There's a lot of shared themes in this, and so I did hear a lot of people from kind of our world, right? Like comic nerds go, why is this the Thunderbolts? We have stuff like this, but they wanted, when you hear the Thunderbolts, you got folks like me who want to see Songbird, right? I want to see Mach 1 and Mach 2. And it felt like a weird way to use that title. But I loved it because they absolutely nailed the tone, right? They took what Thunderbolts the comic should be, and they distilled it down to an essence. And they used characters that weren't in the Thunderbolts, unless you read the more modern versions and stuff, but they still give you a redemption arc, and they still give you a lot of Thunderbolts is full of depression, right? These folks are fucked up in the head, and they're having to work through some shit, and they give you that. To me, that is good storytelling, because again, that's hard to do. How do you boil down the essence of something to where it is a transferable storytelling tool to characters who did not share that moment? I thought that was a great piece of craft work. So again, it's a fun romp through history. You get to remember what the Avengers were like in the mid 2000s. Super cool stuff. You get to look at George Perez art. You get to look at Mark Bagley art. Not too shabby writers on either of those stories. You've got Kurt Busiek, obviously, and then Fabian Nicieza. That's a good
and
team.
Also, if I may, two writers that work well together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there's
the story was relatively seamless.
I think if you do more of a double take with one name than two here.
Yeah.
I remember that arc, and it kind of felt like they wrote it together.
It did. It went really well together.
Yeah.
So, I also have a fun story behind when I got this. This issue. So, I grew up out in the middle of nowhere in Arkansas at the time. We were poor, and so we went to the city whenever I needed to go to get my braces fixed, like go to the orthodontist. So I think I've told this story before. My mom would take me, and because we were going to the city that is Little Rock, we'd stop at the mall. She'd go do her shopping. I would hang out in Walden Books once a month, so much so that the managers got to know me because I was 12. I was this little chubby kid with braces who would just come in there and just would read. And then I would buy the comics that I read. And so they liked me in Walden Books. So I got to know the managers and stuff. And this is a Walden Books, right? It's a chain. It's somebody who's making whatever they're making and they're just living life. I was super excited and told her, ask her, do you have this? Because there's this crossover from the Avengers, but I don't collect that issue. And she said, no, we don't. I don't think we have that. She went to the little rack with me and looked, and they just didn't have it. And I was bummed, but okay, whatever. The next month when I went in there, she had it for me. She had went and bought it.
I love stories like that.
Yep. This manager of my local Walden Books, a chain bookstore in the mall, took it upon herself to go. She went out to a comic shop that she found in Little Rock, and she told me where it was at. And she said, I went there because I knew you wanted it, and I bought this for you. And she kept it for a month and then gave it to me.
That's good.
That made me fall in love with comics, or like I was already in love with comics, but that made me fall in love with like this idea of shared stories and that we do things with each other. And it's very wholesome, right? But I still remember that to this day. Still very much remember how that felt. So just be kind to people, right? Like it's a simple gesture that will live with you for the rest of your life. And so I wanted to share that story as well. So that gave me an excuse to talk about Thunderbolts Volume 2. Again, back issue, bin diving. Go have fun. I want to see Count Nefaria and Madame Mask. I want to see them in the MCU. That'd be fun. But go back issue diving and pick up this 3-issue crossover event for the Thunderbolts.
But I would want to see the Hawkeye version of Madame Mask.
Oh yeah,
because that's so fucking twisted.
They talk about that in this issue too. They touch on that not only so relationship there. Yeah. Also, at the time, Madame Mask had dated the guy who was the S.H.I.E.L.D. liaison to the Avengers. And so he pops up on one of their calling cards because that was the big thing. And he was like, wait, is that Whitney? and he was like, yeah, we'll talk about that later. Because it was Hawkeye. It was this awkward moment between Hawkeye and the S.H.I.E.L.D. guy.
Yeah.
So,
right, nice. All right. Caleb, if you could briefly show the Thunderbolts 1 that you had originally picked.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The reason I was scurrying over here is I have a great George Perez variant cover of that issue with Songbird of a sketch that he drew in 1999. And Steve, that was actually one of the books that I got from the blind bags that we got at Heroes Con last year.
Yeah.
That's I was scurrying trying to find that to show off, but it's not logged away in one of these, but it's somewhere. I just couldn't find it quick.
But yeah, if you want, because Bill brought this back up, if you do want a more recent Thunderbolts book, and maybe I'll talk about this in another episode or something like that. So those of you who are like, oh, Caleb totally copped out, and talked about something that was unrelated whatsoever, I may cover this one because it's a more recent version with Bucky. It's fun. Go check this out. Your local comic shop probably still has these, and relatively cheap. So.
And that's one thing about Thunderbolts is like they're not expensive. The back issues.
Nah.
I'm sure Thunderbolts #1 in the first appearance in the Incredible Hulk might set you back a little bit, but generally in cross series, they're not expensive in back.
I've got like 3 different back issue projects I'm working on that I have to finish first, but I may put this version of Thunderbolts on my list.
Yep.
And maybe try to go put them together.
All right, cool. Well, the character that I want to talk about is the Winter Soldier. And Steve, if you can put up the graphic that I have, this actually is a one-shot. This is Winter Soldier. I almost tripped over my tongue again. Winter Soldier, Winter Kills. It was written by Ed Brubaker, who was essentially the creator of Winter Soldier, with art by Lee Weeks and, I forgot Guiadano's first name. I'm so sorry. Do you guys remember what his first name is?
I can find out really quick.
It's not coming to me. I'm so sorry. And there's also a few pages in here that are by Rick Hoberg, as the artist did, or touch onto flashback pages. So I just confirmed this before we had our show. Bucky was created in 1941. Bucky Barnes was created in 1941. This is a 2006 comic. This is the first ever Bucky Barnes solo story. 43 to 2006, he was only a supporting character. A hell of a supporting character, but a supporting character. And when characters in the Marvel Universe started reviving, they were previously dead and all of a sudden they're not dead anymore. There was a hard and fast rule that was in place at Marvel for over 20 years that there were 2 characters you could not revive. One was Uncle Ben, and one was Bucky Barnes. I think I can mention him, but he's not involved in this story. Caleb, I'll get to that. But with this particular story, it takes place during Casualties of War, which is the post-Civil War period. Steve Rogers is on one side, Tony Stark is on another, and various heroes have gone on to other sides. One team, apart from the Avengers, that was split apart were the Young Avengers. And they are some of them are on the side of Cap, and some of them are on the side of Tony Stark. The characters that are part of the Captain America side are the Jonas version of Vision, our Patriot, and is the female Kate, the Hawkeye. So this particular story, it concerns that, but there's other things that are at play here. It actually starts in 1944. The Invaders, which Bucky was a member of, along with Captain America, Human Torch, Toro, and Submariner, they are on leave for Christmas. So this is the last Christmas that Bucky has as a free man until he's presumed dead and the whole Winter Soldier Russian thing happens. If you're unfamiliar with that story, there's plenty of sources, whether they be film or whether they be in print, that you can access about that. You just need to know that 1944 was his last Christmas before 2006. So he's remembering what was going on, and he was at a dance, and he's there with Steve and with Toro. Namor is going to go off to see Spitfire just because it kind of drives Torch crazy. But they're in suits, and it's like a Hollywood canteen type of experience. That there's people welcoming the soldiers who are temporarily back. There's beautiful starlets that they can dance with. So he's remembering this, and then immediately you shot into 2006. Now, one thing about Bucky was he was a ruthless assassin. This was never played upon until we got to the Ed Brubaker version of Captain America. And Caleb kind of pinged me with the mentions. One of the artists on that was Butch Geis. And unfortunately, we did lose Butch Geis this week. So it's a shame because he was a really wonderful artist and had a very long career in comics. Very long, stretching from I want to say the very late 70s. Maybe definitely the 80s, because he was a prominent name even by then, but he was one that worked on Captain America during the landmark Ed Brubaker series, which introduced Winter Soldier. So Bucky is in 2006. He's alone in New York City, and this is his first Christmas, that he was as a free man since 1944, and he's not feeling too good. But then he gets a call from Nick Fury, and Nick Fury tells him, "Look, we have these 3 kids, these young Avengers, Patriot, Hawkeye, and Vision, and they're going after a Hydra unit, and they're in over their heads. We're really worried that they're in over their heads." So, as I talk back with mentioning that the reason that Bucky was paired with Steve was because he could do stuff Steve wouldn't do. And, I think they did want to keep Captain America as this pristine concept for propaganda purposes. But if you needed to take somebody out, Bucky was more likely the one to do it over Steve. And he knows what Hydra's like. So he's ideal for this job. The 3 young Avengers, they're a little bit off put by this because that's not really the code that they go by. So the first casualty from Hydra kind of freaks them out, but he calms them and said, "Hey, this is an entity that's at war with us, and this is how we have to fight some of them. You don't have to do this. You be yourselves. But the reason I'm here is because this is what I'm the type of person that's needed here to help you through this."
Wet work.
Yep. So they go through that. They go through the meeting. Steve, if you could just throw some of the other images here, you'll see, if you can go back to the one previous, again, we're at the post-Civil War period. There are people in the States that think Steve was the traitor during the schism between him and Tony. So that's a poster that he's seeing there in 2006. If we can go there, if we can go forward, and I apologize to people who are only listening to this, but you can grab the issue and follow along. We see this very nice Lee Weeks art of Bucky getting into costume and getting moving. If we can go to the next one, Steve. So this is one of the first guys that was taken out because it was actually Bucky who redirected one of Hawkeye's arrows to knock this guy out. And again, there he goes. I killed a terrorist team, lots of them. So they're going through the mission there. And Steve, if you can just go forward a little bit, and this is the more important part of the story. As part of the actions as the Winter Soldier, he took out Jack Monroe. Jack Monroe took over for him as the Bucky of the 1950s, and then later became Nomad. Had a very sad life. Really, makes Bucky's look like a party. And while he was the Winter Soldier, he was the one engaged during the Del Rusk period of that situation that took out Jack Monroe and killed him. And he never met him. And he felt, now that he's a free man, it only felt right to go to his grave and apologize. So he's there. He's through that process. But it turns out that there's somebody else he knows that's at this funeral and at this cemetery. And you see there, that's where he realizes there's somebody behind him. So, Steve, if you can go to the next page. You can go back. Spoiling it for the visuals, but this sense immediately took him back to that last Christmas in 1944, where he basically pushed Toro to dance with this beautiful woman, this beautiful Veronica Lake looking woman. And Steve's commenting to Bucky, you know, she's out of both your leagues. But it was a really nice Bucky moment because he was much more street smart than Toro was. Toro would have, and people are unfamiliar with who Toro was. Toro was the original Human Torch's sidekick, and with Namor, one of the earliest mutants. So you see this lovely moment, and then we go back to the cemetery, and it turns out that the person that was with us in the cemetery with him was Namor. And they have this conversation about, you know, that this is, you know, both of them are commenting, you know, neither of us really have anything better to do on this Christmas Eve. You know, let's pay some respects. And if you can go to the next page, Steve, another person that's buried in the cemetery is Toro. And Submariner was present when Toro died, and they have a conversation about that. And it's just a really nice coda, brings a lot of things forward, and you know, ties them in a knot for Bucky. I think this story is maybe 36 pages, but it feels like a mini series going through it. As I said, it's Ed Brubaker, you know, so that's a very good custodian for this character who really gave, you know, Bucky Barnes existed before, but Winter Soldier didn't. It's been reprinted many times. It's in the Captain America, the main omnibus. It's in the Casualties of War collections. So, and of course, it's available digitally. And I think of you, Caleb, a lot with this story because of the Young Avengers and because of Namor. And especially, it's a damn shame that we have never had an Ed Brubaker written Namor series, because Namor's dialogue in this is chef's kiss.
And we probably never will, which also I love this too, because if folks are new comics readers, or they're, you know, in just the past like 3 to 5 years, you know, Brubaker is associated with crime stories now. Him and Phillips are that's just what they do and what they're known for. New comic readers, you know, may not realize, you know, especially if you don't read Marvel stuff, may not realize the history that Ed Brubaker has with these characters. And I think that's really important to remind people that he did write these and wrote them really well. I love this one shot, and I appreciate that you thought of me, because I think it was, like I said, it's got everything I love in it. Young Avengers, you give me Namor, which I'm a big Invaders fan too. And for folks who want to read some of that stuff, what was it, 2 years ago, they put it together in a really good omnibus, at least the Invaders Volume 1. There's a really good omnibus of it. You can
Which is it's really, you know, probably the first important retcon in comics, that there was this team, the Invaders, that operated behind the Axis lines in World War II, and you know, it was Roy Thomas who created the concept. You had numerous covers during World War II where you would see Cap and Torch and Namor together, but there were no stories. You know, there were no stories of this team, and that's how that started. And so I know it was exactly a 41 issue run, because it was one of my favorite series growing up as a kid, and a lot of the revivals have been pretty good.
Yeah, they have
some pretty good ones. There was a really good James Robinson one. It was one that grew out of the later Avengers of that period. That I think it was. It might have been Chuck Austin, or like some of the few stories he wrote that were good. What
was it? Was it an Invaders series that Butch Geist drew a couple years ago? Just since I think he drew something with Namor, and I forget if it was the Namor series or was the.
I think that might have been like connected with those one shots. Remember the snapshots miniseries?
Yeah. I think it might have been. Okay, yeah.
I think he may have drawn that one, but there have been others over time, and none of them have been long runs since, but definitely a worthwhile concept to revisit every so often.
They're fun.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, I mean this Bucky story, like, I'm familiar with it in reprints. I didn't get the original, you know, when this came out. But I've read it since I don't know, it's been reprinted. I've seen it.
Yeah, it's in a bunch of things.
It might have even been also a free comic book day reprint at some point as well. I mean, it's definitely been around. But This is definitely not even a good introduction to Bucky. It's a good reintroduction to Bucky and Winter Soldier. If you've been reading any of the more recent stuff, getting to go back and read this will give you a good, good idea of.
And how great is it? How great is it that Bucky Barnes' first solo story only has Steve Rogers in 2 pages?
Yeah.
I think that's
and not even present Steve Rogers, but
yeah.
I thought it was a fun nod back to timely stuff too.
Yeah. Very nice, but also firmly set in the new world. Firmly set in the post Civil War era for comics, involving younger characters, which Bucky was. He was a sidekick.
Yeah,
and it's a really, really good one. It's a really good one shot. Can I say this again? It's a really good one shot.
Have they ever brought back Toro?
No. I mean, they've had a female Toro that there is a lineage to the original, but they've never really brought him back. I mean, they brought him back in the 60s and like immediately died. But
I was trying to, I forget what it was. I feel like there was something that they acknowledged or they nodded to him. That was Toro, because they showed you the original Human Torch. But and everybody thought it was him, but it wasn't.
I don't think so. I
don't know what I've got to go figure that out, but I don't think it was like a bringing him back kind of situation. But you said at the very beginning there was 2 people that Marvel didn't let you touch, right? It was Bucky and Uncle Ben, and I was just thinking, I was like, man, they haven't done anything with Toro. That might be because they brought back Gwen. They've not brought back Uncle Ben really, but there's other shows with him in it. So Toro might be one of the last people they haven't brought back.
Okay. And Toro's okay, so the Avengers Invaders miniseries, they brought Toro's past self back to the present. Briefly.
Maybe that's what I was thinking.
And then Bucky Barnes resurrected Toro with the Cosmic Cube. So yeah, there is a Toro. I forgot about that in the.
So he's back. So he's officially back.
Right. I totally forgot about that because they haven't done much with him. And then they retconned him again that he was an Inhuman, but then I think they went back to. I totally forgot about Avengers Invaders that went into that Hulk that Torch series.
Why the hell don't we have that series right now?
I don't know. And especially with one of the first mutants.
Yeah,
come on, guys! You got a whole line that's sinking.
Can I be bitchy for a second?
No,
I'm ready for CB Cebulski to go.
Yeah, it's Toro's time. Caleb, I totally forgot about that Torch series.
Yeah, it was ringing. Like I was thinking about it, and I was like, there's something there that I've seen him lately, but I couldn't remember what it was. Yeah. And that Invaders series was great. That crossover. So that's fantastic. Yeah, but
and that was a little weird because Marvel outsourced that to Dynamite.
They did.
Yeah. They outsourced that to Dynamite. In the subsequent Torch series, they also outsourced to Dynamite. Yeah, God, I can't believe I didn't remember that.
I need to go reread that.
I have to reread that.
That was a cool moment. I remember that being now that I'm thinking about it. The bringing him back with the Cosmic Cube was a great little twist because that's not what you thought was happening.
That female Toro would have been prior to that. Yeah. In time from yeah. All right. Sorry, Toro.
Poor Toro.
We're with you. Nobody loves buddy.
Toro.
Yeah. But as soon as I saw Avengers Invaders 12, God, the Cosmic Cube. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, God. Okay. Well, that's very comic booky talk. So we're going to transition into some other comics that we think you may enjoy. Some ones that are currently on the rack. Fortunately, fellas, because of the time, we're going to have to speed this up a little bit. So I know you both have books you want to talk about, and I do too. So let's just try to keep it somewhat streamlined, not go off into 20 minutes on a book. But I know at least one of the other books that you're talking about, and it's potent. So let's get started. Steve, let's talk with you about a comic book that you enjoy.
Well, I picked this up on Free Comic Book Day. I wasn't expecting to, but it just enticed me on the shelf, and I'm a sucker for anything with a Frazetta cover on it, which this one did. And I am, of course, talking about not the Herculoids. Sorry, Heavy Metal #1. So this is the relaunch.
Okay, so this was not a free comic book day book, but
This was not a free comic book day book, but I saw it on the wall, and I had to
got
pick it
this tray out for nothing.
Yeah. Oh no, we'll talk about that maybe briefly. But so Heavy Metal #1 relaunched for the I think 4th time at this point.
3rd or 4th.
This is actually the first #1 after essentially they folded back in 2022-23. Last year, last fall, the new and also returning editor-in-chief Frank Forte, along with Dave Kelly and Chris Thompson, launched a Kickstarter to bring it back. And they had, immediately tons of backers. It was extremely successful. They had a lot. A lot of the things were, special covers and all these things, which, Heavy Metal is known for beautiful cover art, lots of big name artists. And so it, of course, it sold pretty well. There was a little bit of controversy, however, because these issues made it to the shelf before a lot of the backers ended up getting their rewards. So, before the backers got their issues or any of the other, different award tiers. So there was a lot of anger there. There's generally been a lot of ill will towards Heavy Metal over the past several years, probably because of their implosion previously and just other reasons. But but I went in there knowing nothing about it because I did not back the Kickstarter. I haven't really been a Heavy Metal reader, but I decided I wanted to pick this up, and I'm really happy I did. This issue is great. It does provide several articles that look at the history of heavy metal, that look at the history of some of the artists. There's a beautiful, article about Greg Hildebrandt, who just passed away last year as well, and had contributed several covers to heavy metal. And it's also just a very, famous fantasy artist in his own right, outside of that. But I mean, this brought back a lot of different comic characters that we've seen before that heavy metal is famous for. Tarna, of course, being, she's right there on the cover. One of the main characters that has been with heavy metal throughout its long life since the 70s. Several stories of Tarna that are listed in this issue. We've also got, just some great one-shot, one-pagers, a few, horror themed stories that are maybe 6-7 pages. It's just chock full of a bunch of different tales, very wild, very different styles, a lot of European reprints in this and translated European comics. And of course, the usual commentary that goes with it. Now, this is not something for, sharing with the family. There are a lot of images that I cannot show, of course, because heavy metal is known for lots of boobies and lots of swangin' dongs, which this one has quite a bit. But there are just some beautiful stories as well, where the art and, just the writing really coalesces very well. Some just beautiful, different variations of styles, some humor, all of that stuff. But it's a fun thing to pick up. It's $15. This is actually Legacy. They have the Legacy numbering on there, 321, because now everybody's doing Legacy numbering. But it's worth it. It's, I believe, going to be published quarterly. Issue number 2 comes out in August. I think I'll be picking up the second issue.
Unless I'm wrong, I think for most of its existence, heavy metal was quarterly.
Yeah, I mean, it's
an expensive book to produce.
It is. It's pricey to buy if you're just into it.
Even during the Grant Morrison, which is the last time I bought it regularly, I want to say it was like maybe $10 or $12.
Yeah,
true. But look at this. I mean, you're buying a lot. So the one thing about having this put together and having it be a $15 book is that this probably has more content, 3 times the content of a $10 book that you're going to be buying from anybody else. and it's got something for everybody. There's a Jim Ruggs story in here that's really interesting. Enki Bilal, of course, has a story in this. There's just a lot of really great. Some of it's nostalgic. If you are familiar with like the 70s and 80s versions of heavy metal, you're going to see some stuff in here that reminds you of that. But there's a lot of really cool stuff. There's concepts that people are provided art for. It's neat. There is, again, some other controversy around it, so it's up to you if you want to support them by buying an issue. I recommend it. I mean, it's
and
it's cool.
I also think it's worth mentioning that they did try to appease people. And I believe if you got the number 1 and haven't received yet, you were going to get number 2 free.
Right.
Is that correct? Is that what the deal was?
They want to make good.
But also, these Kickstarter people, they didn't Kickstarter it at 15. It was like $25.
Oh yeah, it wasn't cheap.
I definitely can understand the ire.
Yeah. And this
I usually come down against comic book fans when they have ire.
Yeah, this one's valid.
This is not one of the.
This is definitely valid.
This is definitely.
And I think it is good that they did try to make do. They didn't just say like, "Well, if you die, who cares? We got your money." But no, I think they did try to make good. I don't know if that's going to appease a lot of people, but if you're just a casual fan, if you're just interested, if you didn't know that heavy metal was back, give it a shot. Pick it up. Maybe they will continue, and maybe it won't. Implode like the last version.
One thing I would love to see is if they can, because I do think a lot of the IP, the creators' rights weren't transferred, but the reprint rights were to this current entity. So please be successful. Please be successful enough that we get the Savage Sword of Jesus Christ collected. Oh, that was a gem from Grant Morrison's era. A gem, please. And I don't have it all, so please.
Oh yeah.
All right, Caleb, over to you. Savage Sword of Caleb. So let's go over to you. What's a book that you're reading that you're enjoying?
So recently, DC's been doing some cool stuff. They're on the right track, you might say. So seriously, if you're not paying attention to kind of comics in general, things ebb and flow. DC is firing on all cylinders right now. Everything is working for them. They've got some just magic in there. Every book is awesome. Visually, it's like even the worst one is still like on a bad day, not a bad read, right? So they are doing some amazing stuff over there. One of little corner of the things that they're doing in are these kind of absolute series, and so you have Absolute Wonder Woman, which is one of my favorite ones, but Absolute Superman and Batman, which made them a lot of money, and now they're getting through some of these other characters. Well, about 2 months now, their one kind of newest Absolute series hit, and it's Absolute Martian Manhunter. I love Martian Manhunter, so I was going to pick this up anyway. But when they started talking about the creative team on it, that it made it a no-brainer. Dennis Camp, very savvy writer, have just like really enjoyed that body of work there. But for me, it's the visual element that was really like, I don't care who else was on this book. I would pick it up, and it could be, I don't know, like absolute dupe. I don't care. It's Javier Rodriguez, who has, and I'll gush about Javier's art shortly, but just it's amazing. Like it is just a treat for your eyes. But all of these absolute stories, and we've spoken about several of them, if not all of them, on the show by now. They do this cool thing where they twist the mythos into something. It's not what the original mythos was, but they keep the essence of the character there. So Wonder Woman, great example. Wonder Woman was raised on a island by Circe in Absolute Wonder Woman. She's not the daughter of the god. She's a curse, right? And she's got all of these different things. So but she's still Wonder Woman, right? She's still recognizable as that character. She's she's about hope in the future and stuff. So I was kind of curious to see what they would do with Martian Manhunter, to see what that tweak was. Well, the story opens up with a bang, literally. So the way that the story opens up with, there has been a suicide bomber who has gone into I think it's a diner, and has detonated and has killed a bunch of people. And John Jones, who in this story is an FBI agent, and is he was there just kind of on investigating something else on a fluke and happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. When he comes to, he's been blown up, and he's lucky to be alive. He's getting checked out by doctors, and he is, they're like, okay, well, you need to go take some time off work, but he doesn't want to. He has things that he needs to do, right? He needs to investigate things. He's kind of a driving force. And when he goes home to his wife, and she's like, well, how long are you going to be off work? He's like, well, I've got to go back tomorrow. And she's like, you were just at a bombing. And he was like, well, it's the FBI, and, lying to her about what he needs to do. And he eventually just kind of lies to everybody to make sure that he goes back to work, because he's fixated on some things and he needs to investigate. All the while, the kind of tone of the story, like you kind of can hear what's happening. It's meant to invoke shell shock, right? Like it is that moment when a flashbang has gone off, your ears are ringing a little bit, and you're kind of coming to, and things are different. And that's what's going on with him as he starts to come and get past the trauma of the moment, right? He starts to realize, I'm understanding. I'm reading people's minds, but I'm not reading their minds. Like, I'm understanding what's going on with the people around me when I'm around them. But it's in his mind, as Steve is showing, it's visualizing as scents, as colors, as these kind of basic print colors, these magenta, blue, yellow, oranges that Javier Rodriguez plays with in all of his stories, right? Like, Javier's got that. This is a loop where he actually brings it back to, which I'm going to art nerd for a minute, like the history of printing, right? The history of 4-color printing, very big on that. He's a very meta artist too. So you get these moments where he's letting the medium do something for the reader in and of itself that's telling its own story. Very, very meta artist. I love it. It's very kind of postmodern and wonderful. But that's how this is manifesting for John Jones, right? And so he's going through this story, trying to basically figure out what's happening to him and why he just doesn't feel right. Like, something is off about all of this, and he starts getting these glimpses of an alien, or an alien type figure. It doesn't really know what it is, but it comes in like static as he is, kind of unveiling. He starts to remember certain things and visualize certain people in ways that he shouldn't. And it's the entire world around him is changing. And at the end of the story, there's this really cool thing that they do with the print copy, which I read mine on my tablet, but you take the print copy and you can hold up a certain page to the light and it'll show you some stuff. It's pretty cool. Which I love that, right? Again, they're playing with print medium, and I think Javier Rodriguez does that so well. Bill, I know before, like, without spoiling anything else, you read this, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, what did you think about this and the way that they both kept the character and then changed him too?
I mean, I think the conceits that they have of John Jones living inside of this guy makes perfect sense with how, it's a twist on the traditional thing of,
shapeshifter takes over a life.
Take somebody, that there actually is a John Jones is wonderful. Javier Rodriguez is going to win all of the awards. He's going to. He did everything in this book apart from the lettering, and there's parts of the lettering that are equally as batshit crazy as his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. I know there's a it's a foreign name to me who the letterer is, but there's so much impressive stuff. This just things that they don't waste any time artistically in this book. John Jones is a smoker. There's smoke all through this book that becomes these kaleidoscopes of color, that drift into this. It's like really good ecstasy. It's like 1985 Texas ecstasy. It's really good. I know I'm dating myself, but there's so much to offer this, and I can totally see people reading this series and not reading anything else, a la Sandman or some other or Transmet, I could understand that because it's so distinctive. It feels very far from a superhero book, but it doesn't feel far from something like Strange Adventures or Tales of the Unexpected. Just that we're going to have a continuing narrative through this, and I thought it was wonderful. Dennis Camp is a very good writer, but this really is the showcase for.
Yeah, it's Javi. This is Javier.
Defenders Beyond
Mhm.
was his pinnacle. You ain't get nothing. You got
And
nothing.
that letterer was it's Hassan Otsman Elahu.
Yeah.
Elau.
God bless you.
He's done a lot. Yeah, I've seen.
Yeah,
I've seen
he's
him in
a
lot of
very
other
accomplished
books.
letterer. Has won a lot of awards.
I mean,
and
just look at the breathes in this page. There's 3 different fonts in the same, and there's very few stories that would allow for that.
I mean, just the way that he writes. This is from the second issue. It's just all of it is very gorgeous. The colors here, Javier's colors, the way that the narrative sort of it can be confusing because there's so much going on, but the way that it's organized or disorganized, you really understand sort of like the train of thought. You're reading what they're thinking, like you're reading the thoughts of not just John Jones, but also in the second issue, it's a gunman. You're reading his thoughts. You're reading the thoughts of all the victims and the people around him. And, there's just so much there.
So that he goes and he's talking to the bomber's mother at one point, and just that moment was just like a punch in the chest. Just like, wow, like that, like.
But even in the first issue, where the entity that's inside him just says "comprehend me," and that just leveled me with it's not out of fear, it's just out of understanding that this plea comes, and it's really good. But it's really hard to describe this book.
It's hard to comprehend.
Really, one thing I would tell people when you do read this, I think. You get, on the digital platform, it pops, but there also is there's some value in reading it in print. However you want to do it, but give yourself time.
Yep.
Give yourself a lot of time. This is not like Youngblood from the 90s that you can read in 3 minutes. You have to give yourself a good chunk of time to really let everything that you're being bombarded with settle in.
What this reminded me of, essentially it just reminded me of this is like reading Vertigo in like the heyday of the hallucinogenic early 90s. Like this was, Morrison.
I think this would have fit in perfectly. Young Animal.
Yes,
I can see that.
And that's the second thing that it reminded me of. The Changing Girl.
Mm-hmm.
That series was told in a very similar style, where it was, you were looking at her thoughts were colors were there was just so much variety on the page.
And they do play with that point where they said his voice sounds green. That's a nod to the past, but still, this was so good. And I also felt like in terms of pacing with Young Animal, there's a very deliberate feel, a very deliberate pace. It's it's wild as shit, the stuff you're seeing, but it's a very steady pace throughout. And one series that I thought mastered that really well was Kate Carson Has a Cybernetic Eye. Where it just was consistent. All this nuttiness is going through, but the pace was measured and consistent. And I felt that too with this.
Who did the art? John Rivera looks like he did the art on that one. Okay.
Really good.
Very
stuff.
similar feel in the art style
and
too.
I know this book is going to be in the top of my stack every month now.
Oh, 100%.
But you have to give yourself time.
I mean, all of the absolute books have done that for me.
From a very visual standpoint, like Martian Manhunter stories have been fire the last couple of kind of iterations, because before this you had Riley Rossmo's version, and I loved that. Like that Martian sex scene is amazing.
I honestly wished I liked him.
Yeah,
I honestly do, and I thought he was much better suited for Martian Manhunter than he was for Legion of Superheroes. But there's a disconnect. It's too much. Like if it was 8 pages of story, I'd be okay. But this, I just don't connect. I absolutely respect the process and that he's a very distinct storyteller. I don't necessarily enjoy watching those images move from page to page.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. We were joined by Görkem Yilmaz as well. He was referring to Martian Manhunter. I never experienced that high quality. It is something to experience, to be honest. It's an experiential book. And I can't wait to see when this is collected, what they'll do with it.
Yeah.
I hope for our friend John's sake, they make like a series of blacklight posters out of this.
Oh yeah.
That'd be cool.
I think so, but at the same token, it's like there's so much color. I'm just trying to think if there's a white light comparison, if there's anything along those lines,
A white Martian light to show. No, oh wait,
and it's amazing. It's like the absence of color in this series is a color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's. I mean, I swear, if you haven't read
it is white, it's very thought out. Yeah.
Javier and Al Ewing did that Defenders. I think it was Defenders series over at Marvel.
Was it Defenders or was it
Defenders?
Defenders Beyond, wasn't it?
It was both Defenders and Defenders Beyond.
Yep.
It was both.
That's right. Yeah.
And
because I read Defenders Beyond, but I didn't read the Defenders one. But the Defenders Beyond, absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, it did the same thing with the negative space. The negative space is a thing, and it's a color in its own right. So it just is a genius with an understanding of composition on a page. It just I love it.
Also, as far as I know, the Defenders series was the only series. Now, I can't claim I know everything of Marvel, but it's the only series I read that followed up on Marvel Comics 1000.
Probably.
I don't remember them following.
Well, I think the only other ones that ever gave a nod to it were written by Al Ewing, so that would track.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. All right, let me go over to my book. Steve, I know it gave you some graphics there. I'll try to pull my...
That I accidentally pulled up for mine? Yes.
Yeah. Booked up.
Here's the right one. Okay.
So Dynamite has been doing fairly well with the Hanna-Barbera titles that they've been producing in the last few months. Excuse my cough, people who are listening and viewing. So they've turned their attentions to the third series, which is the Herculoids. And the Herculoids here, the writer is Tom Sniagosi. The artist is Craig Rosu. And like any Dynamite, there's a ton of artists that contribute. So the issues that I have for the first issue, I had to go with the Mike Mignola cover. And for the second issue, which I think you have a graphic, but we'll show it later. This is just a really underrated, as far as I'm concerned, artist as a cover artist, Philippe Massafara. He's mostly done Dynamite, but I think he could pop up in the big two doing stuff, and you'll see a pretty stunning image later. So the problem with the Herculoids TV series, which happened in the 1960s from Hanna-Barbera, is every episode of the 30 episodes that were produced is the same fucking story. It's the same fucking story. The Herculoids are these animals that were trained by Xandor on this, what is basically like a paradise planet. And the planet's name is Amzot. And every so often there are invaders that come into the realm of the Herculoids. They might come from outer space. They may come from inner space. But they invade, they get defeated, and that literally is the plot to every episode of the Herculoids. It was just like, it was made for 8-year-olds to see like cool animals fighting spaceships and shit. So what they do here is they pay homage to that, but they try to flesh it out a little more. It's established in both comics and even animation that Herculoids and Space Ghosts operate in the same world. They are part of the same continuity. So what do we have here in the first 2 issues of the Herculoids? Well, as I said, there's invaders. And the thing is, this was a situation with the and let me get the he's kind of a MacGuffin, but yeah, Quintel is the invader this time. And there were previous invasions of Amzat from his culture, and they failed. But what he thought was he has these robots and these cyborgs that were like basically dormant that are still on Amzat, and he can revive them and conquer Amzat. That's basically the story. So they go through this. There's some other inhabitants, but almost immediately you have Igu, who is the gorilla type. And the names, if you're not familiar, they might crack you up. So we have Igu. I don't think I have visuals for everybody, but Igu is almost like a King Kong type of character. And then Steve, if you go to the next pterodactyl type character is Zoc. And then you also have a Triceratops character, which is named Tundro. And then over here, Steve, if you can go back, you're flipping on me too much. You have the closest that are actually the pets, Gleep and Gloop, which are these like gelatinous characters who are actually probably the most powerful of the Herculoids. And so you also have Tarna, who was the wife, and you have their son Dorno, and they fight off the invaders. That's basically the stories. But Steve, if you can keep going, the next image here is, as I said, the Lassafara art, just beautiful stuff. And then as we go in the Philippe Massafara, yep, the Brazilian Alex Ross. I did not know he was from Brazil. Thank you, James. Much appreciated. So if we can go to the next slide there, Steve, if there are, this is where Quintel faces the Herculoids, and Xander tells him, just back off. It's not going to end well for you. It's not going to end well for you. So we keep going, and they just have this great, spectacular fights with robots. The Herculoids dispatch them very easily. So it's basically you got in the first 2 issues your standard Herculoids plot. But the thing was, this battle kind of dislodged something in the core of the Earth on Amzat. So what appears to be like a standard thing is setting up something that's a little different for what you might see in a Herculoid story. So at the very end, it almost feels like the Mole Man is coming. And Caleb, I know that probably has some appeal to you. So I don't think this was necessarily as successful as either the Space Ghost or the Johnny Quest reboots that Dynamite recently has published. But it sure is fun. It sure is fun. And I do think as the series goes on, you're going to see something that's a little more expansive than just invaders coming to Amzat, getting defeated, and that's the end of it. I honestly think that this setup is for something that's a much bigger story. So,
I mean, as somebody who watched the Herculoids repeats,
but
it
right,
literally
Steve?
It was the same episode
same
every
story
time.
every time. Yeah,
same thing. But I mean, I think giving it the chance to breathe in comic form and getting to do some interesting things with it, where you're not. One of the reasons why they probably had the same story every single time. 1, it's easy for kids to follow, but 2, they can recycle all of those animation cells and just keep reusing the same, just like Scooby-Doo at the time, where you just use the same one of them running right across the screen or whatever.
And Gleep and Gloop have a very, speaking of Scooby-Doo, they have a very distinctive vocal style. It's like,
yeah.
And you definitely hear that when you're reading this, but it's almost like this is almost like a premature premature rave, because I just have a feeling it's going to places that it hasn't gone before. I just have a feeling. I feel like they just gave you what you're used to right at the outset, but the bigger story is going to be much more. So we'll see.
That.
Yeah,
I like that. Bring
That's cool.
Bring something new to it.
yeah, and it, again, you just, Dynamite has remained a publisher where you could buy the covers and be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've remained a publisher. Archie had that too for a while, but that went by the wayside.
Well, and let's be honest, there's some good stuff at Dynamite, but a lot of times the covers are the only reason to buy Dynamite books.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you usually do have at least 20 versions of each issue.
Between the incentives and the Virgin art. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
almost any standard book has at least 10, at the very least 10.
And sometimes the interior art just is not as good. But I've enjoyed what I picked up from Dynamite, some of their properties, some of their what's the open rights one, the Project Superpowers. The Project
Public
Superpowers
Domain,
book.
you mean?
Yeah, the Public Domain. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love their version of these characters, and I've loved like the Death-Defying Daredevil and some of the other ones that they've had out. But a lot of times it's the covers that really sell it.
Those
the
stories,
usually good.
that is like the interiors. The stories are good in those.
Yeah, stories are good.
I know what you're talking about.
Art doesn't sell it. Yeah, but the covers are always gorgeous. Whoever they get for the covers, you've got your pick.
And for number one, there were 40 different covers for this.
Oh shit!
40 different versions.
40.
I didn't
Collect
get
them all,
Rob
kids.
Liefeld.
The Rob Liefeld ones. Interestingly enough, he gave the Gleep and Glop. He gave them feet. I don't know.
I wonder if Xandor has pockets.
Just pouches everywhere and on the loincloth, all of it. Just
All right. We're veering off into weird territory because it's late, so we have to start wrapping the show up. Normally, we would go right to our Geekettes at this point, but we do have some Kickstarters we want to talk about. So, Steve, if you briefly can go over two of them, and I'll take the last one.
Sure. So we had a couple friends and former guests on the podcast have recently had some Kickstarters. There's one that's currently still going. Cena Grace has a Kickstarter that he's been working on for a book that means a lot for him because it's about his dog who has passed away. And it's a very personal story. It's very autobiographical, which is a great return to form for him because that's how, I kind of fell in love with his work. And we've talked to him on the show several times about some of his more autobiographical and more personal pieces. This one is called Life on Pause, and that's PAWS. It is still ongoing. It has met its goal. In fact, it's got 20 hours to go as of now. So probably... if you're watching live, definitely hurry up and run over there if you haven't supported it. Otherwise, it'll be completed by then. By the time you're listening to the audio version, the second one is it's a new like a new publisher, a new publishing incentive that's getting started here, and it's being at the start of Tightrope Press is the name of the new initiative. Their first Kickstarter was for the book No Saints Nor Poets, and it's written by again favorites of the show Yando Zanfordino and Elisa Romboli, and it is a sort of queer, pirate, roguish, fantasy story with some romance elements to it. They also met their goal. It recently ended within the past week, so we're highly anticipating that. Can't wait for it to go to press. Obviously, if you backed it, you'll be getting issues. If you didn't, they do plan on making them available at some point for purchase at your store or through order. So highly recommend it, and congratulations to both teams for getting fully funded.
Look at me. I had my mind. Okay. Anyway, the Kickstarter I wanted to talk about is from the best friend of the series, let's put it that way, and that's Steve Bryant. Steve has written a new graphic novel, which is the first in a series. Planned series is drawn by Rob Jones and colors by Jason Millett. Jason's colored a lot of Steve's stuff in the past. And this is called Shaken and Stirred. And Steve, if you can put that graphic up, I'd really appreciate it. This is volume 1, The Man Who Sold the World. Yes, it takes a lyrical reference from a particular artist. And you will notice that there is a very double O number vibe, let's put it that way, to Shaken and Stirred. Even the title is a nod to that. And what goes on in Shaken and Stirred? Well, for decades, Simon Abbey has left a trail of bodies and has burned his share of other agents professionally and personally. Abbey has gone rogue, and those agents are lining up to take him down. So the first volume is going to be 138 pages. If you're watching, we're going to just be showing you some of the key pages here. So if you like spy stuff, this is right up your alley. And it has 11 days to go. It has met its goal. I'm so happy. Like, everybody's met their goal. It's great to report that there's nothing to shut. But, here we have some great action, some great spy imagery, the loading of the gun, the cars are always, but there's this is definitely taking place in the modern world. And if you want to take a look at that last thing, but a big salute to Steve for including an image like that. So you can go to Kickstarter. As I said, it's 11 days left to go. There are various different campaign levels, and we already can say congrats to Steve on meeting this, but let's see how far we can take those incentives. And this is the first. I've contributed to all 3 of these. Isn't that why? Like, this is the first time that because we let's be honest, we've had Kickstarters on that we never contributed to, or some of us did. Just the way things work out.
I'm 2 of 3.
Yeah. But I'm really looking forward to this, and was very happy to talk to Steve. Unfortunately, we couldn't have him on last week because we had our Star Wars dedicated episode. It didn't work in the plans for this one because of Thunderbolts, but we'll definitely have Steve on again.
And if you reach out to him.
But yeah, if you haven't, take a look at the preview pages that are part of the Kickstarter campaign for Shaken and Stirred, and see if you want to click through and join. I think you will. If you like a particular franchise, let's put it that way, right up your alley. So.
Oh yeah.
All right, I guess we have to really start wrapping this up. We're over 2 hours and 11 minutes, so let's do it. So when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we go to final 2 segments, and the first of those final 2 segments is where we show off our Geekettes. Now, this past Saturday was Free Comic Book Day, and I did my best. After 4 stops, I was able to get 37 of the titles in here. I believe it was 37 or 38 that I have in here. Gone are the days when you could get them all, but maybe if I hit a 5th or 6th shop, I would have done that. But my Saturday was a long day, and we'll talk about that in most of the week. But let's start with Steve. What do you have to show off?
So I got a bunch of free comic book day books, but also one of the things that you get when you go into these stores is often you want to buy something as well. And one of the local stores here did have a sale, buy 2 get 1 free. So I ended up picking a couple trades up. I ate The Whole World to Find You, which is a new Fantagraphics book. Americus, which is an older YA title, and then why not the DC compact version of Kingdom Come?
Oh, nice. That's nice.
I don't have it in print. I have it digitally, but now I've got it in print. But my big get this past week came in one of the Kickstarters that we have promoted on the show, and we've had the guests on the show, and I ended up getting the award. So that was the Heirs of Isildur, which is the 4th volume. Mm-hmm. We ended up getting the trade version, but also because I backed that and the Stabby Bunny, I got all 3 of the metallic sort of foil cards, which are actually beautiful. But I went a little step further, and even though I don't have a turntable, I do know that a certain person sitting next to me in this does, and so he'll be getting a copy of the Heirs of Isildur album that they created for it. And I do have to say, because I decided to go for the fancy vinyl.
Oh, that's awesome!
That is, it's beautiful. But yeah, so I thought this was absolutely fantastic. Again, I don't have a turntable, so I can't listen to the record, but I can listen to the MP3s that they did send.
Nice.
But it is cool. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I also love seeing in a Kickstarter. I love supporting, people that go the extra mile and they do some really cool stuff. So, like, if you want to listen to an album, I'm sure for the next volume they will probably do the same thing. So,
Matt and Steph have really been hitting the comic book.
Oh yeah, they've been really pushing and promoting, and I'm really happy.
You can find them out there. They're doing a lot of shows. Yeah. All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what do you have under the Geek Gets banner?
Well, so unfortunately, I did not get to get out and about to go to any comic book shops for free comic book day, so I missed out on that party. But I did, through the magic of mail, get my hardcover copy of Plastic Man No More in. So that's my Geek Get. If you haven't read this, it's fantastic. It's Christopher Cantwell, Alex Lenz, who, again, the art's the reason I picked it up and wanted it. But I was so impressed by what Alex Lenz did in here, I went ahead and got the hardcover treatment on it. So that's my Geek Get, is Plastic Man No More.
Okay. For my Geek Get, I'm going to show some of my comic book day. I went a very different route from Steve. I went old in terms of the half price and the 75% off and the 25% off sales. So whenever I can get them at decent prices, I do. So I have yet another quality Blackhawk from the 1950s.
Nice.
Excellent.
I'm doing well with these now. You can still find them at decent prices. So I was very happy with that. One thing I got, which is not comics, which is part of the comic book sales, and it certainly is comic adjacent, given the publisher, is in the 1970s, they used to put out these magazines from Warren Publishing that published, Eerie and Creepy and Vampirella and also Famous Monsters. This was more under the Famous Monsters banner, where pre-internet, you didn't have images at your fingertips. So these magazines which were these, pretty much authorized photo books. They were the Star Wars one here. Oh, I'm shaking the Close Encounters. The Star Wars one. This sold 2.2 million copies.
Wow.
I mean, that's how big these were. So I got the Close Encounters. I got the Star Wars Spectacular from Warren. Had these as a kid. They evaporated in my hands, because of rereading. And then the next two, these on first sight are going to look much more impressive than they are. So these are not the actual Golden Age issues, because
I was going to say,
if I was holding these, that would have been a trip to Hawaii and then some. But I have the reprints from All American Comics number 24 and America's Greatest Comics number 7 from the 1940s. These were a initiative that lasted from 74 to I think 77, called Flashback, that did reprint these. Public domain laws were not really codified at that point, so how authorized, I don't know. But for a couple of years, you did get these. The interiors are black and white, actually, but full reprints of Golden Age comics. So I got 2 of those there. So those are my
cool.
Yeah. The old guy got the old stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
And the Sectors.
And the Sectors. There you go.
Sectors.
James was wondering if that was the first appearance of Alan Scott.
First appearance was number 16.
Was it 16? I thought it was
16. All American.
Yeah,
16.
I guess maybe. Yeah.
But unlike some characters, like he was the cover feature for most of the 40s. Hop Harrigan slipped in for some of them, at least when the serial was happening. but he was the cover star for the. Even Superman. There's issues of Action Comics early on where Superman's not the cover star.
Yeah.
Did I ever get you those Hop Harrington episodes?
Well, I already had them.
You already did? Oh, I did. Yeah, I did grab. Okay.
Yeah. And
I was like,
of the DC,
Hop Harrington, I know
the
those.
DC serials, that's the worst. Like,
it's terrible. I barely made it through one episode.
It's awful. Yeah. The others range from watchable to fun. If you can like get around the like extreme racism in the Batman 1942 one, but that one's not good. It's not good. But we digress because we're going to go on to the last segment in our show, which is a segment we call the Woofs of the Week in the bear community. If you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar here where we woof at something which may be comic book or comic book related, might be a TV program or a film or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
It's actually a video game that I have not been able to stop playing. It's been torture to force myself to read, which I have been able to do a lot of reading, but since this game came out, I've been playing it constantly, and it is Claire Obscure Expedition 33. It's a French-made video game inspired very greatly by Final Fantasy. So if you like turn-based Japanese RPGs, but with a European perspective, this is the game for you. It is gorgeous. It is beautiful. The soundtrack album has broken the top 50 on the Billboard charts right now for classical music because it is a wonderful soundtrack. It has 154 tracks, and the visuals are gorgeous. The gameplay is amazing. It's challenging. It's fun. The story is emotional, and I've been playing it completely in French. But I hear that the American voice actors or the English voice actors, you've got Charlie Cox in there as well, as one of the actors. But it's very well produced. Great game. If you haven't been playing it, if you have a PlayStation, an Xbox, or a PC, it is playable on any of those.
Cool. All right.
Sink a couple 100 hours in that.
All right. Over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your woof of the week?
My woof of the week actually goes out to a television show. I'll pull that from Steve, take up that space that Steve normally does. And that is The Last of Us Season 2. The episodes are slowly titrating out. I think we're up to 3 now, 3 or 4. And there is a big twist very early on that I think a lot of people didn't see coming if they didn't play the video game, or they just weren't expecting. It's really good. I love Bella Ramsey. They are awesome. Like just on the screen, off the screen, it's good stuff. But yeah, no, season 2 is really fantastic so far. The third episode of this one, this last episode, will pull at you a little bit, and man, I forget how jacked up that world is. But it's some good stuff.
All right, cool. I have not been able to bring myself to watch that yet. I know too much about what went down, and I'm not prepared.
I held off. I held off watching, and then Jason was like, "Hey, why haven't we watched the next episode?" I'm like, "Okay."
All right. Well, for my woofs of the week, I'm just going to concentrate on one, but I've gone to a number of concerts recently. And brought back vinyl. I got a reissue from the Gang of Four from their farewell tour. I got a signed CD from Alison Moyet's show. But the one I really want to talk about is I got the vinyl album of Undefeated by Frank Turner. This is the 10th album by Frank Turner. The last album was his first #1 in the UK. Sometimes he's credited with his bands, the Sleeping Souls. Sometimes he's not. For this album, the Sleeping Souls provide a lot of backing, but the Undefeated tour in the States, at least this leg, was acoustic. And if you ever think that punk rock doesn't work acoustically, go see Frank Turner. It was amazing. He's an artist that seriously the dates have never worked out. It was my first time seeing him, though I've listened to him, basically through the entirety of his at least his after his first band, his output. And his stuff just stays strong. So this is from 2004, Undefeated. This is the current album. He's playing a number of cities over the next 2 months, and if you can catch him, do it. It's a great experience. I am a convert at this point. There is no way this is going to be my only time seeing Frank Turner live. So
that's awesome.
Yep. Now I can tell you what happened on that day. Initially, the old guy here saw that there was a 3 p.m. and a 9 p.m. show. I was going to be out traveling for a free comic book day, so my whole plan was to make a big circle from Central Jersey to Northern Jersey and back to Central Jersey to see the show. I get to the venue. Nothing is happening, even though the venue, the show's about to start in half an hour. Turns out that there were problems with the venue. The venue could not even get into their own website to make an update. So he had a replacement show at 7 for both shows. They were going to do one show 2 counties away. Luckily, it's the county that I grew up in, so I was familiar with it. Still had a great time, but Lord, Saturday was a long day for me. Lordy.
Oh.
And the venue where I saw it, I should just give a supplemental woof to the Williams Center in Rutherford, New Jersey. There's a combination bookstore and record store inside the venue. There were 2 movie theaters. There's a larger proscenium stage and a smaller black box stage. And there's an ice cream parlor inside the venue. It's really cool. It's a really cool place. So
nice.
Yeah.
If you're ever in Rutherford, New Jersey.
Yep.
Check them out.
Yep. All right, well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Comic Book Bears. I know that we get a lot of new people watching or listening when we do cover a film. So if it's your first time joining us, thank you. You can find us on Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can find us on most other social media as Comic Book Bears. If you want to listen to us, you can download our episodes through Apple Podcasts. You can listen to us through the Spotify and many of the other podcatching platforms. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you've joined us live tonight from Facebook Live, thank you. If you've joined us live from YouTube Live, thank you. If you're watching us later on YouTube, thank you. Please like and subscribe. So until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
If you're listening to the audio version, you're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back in about 2 weeks. Take care, everyone.
Woof.